Commissioner Higgins, thank you for your time here today. We're going to be talking a lot about the budget and what's going on in Miami-Dade County. And I want to ask you this question. So Miami-Dade is one of the fastest growing communities in the country. How do we get to this position where we're looking at a $400 million budget deficit?
Great question. And I know a lot of our residents are asking that question. And frankly, I am still asking that question. And what do I mean by that? I am a commissioner that has the pleasure of serving South Miami-Dade County, District 8. I am one of 13 commissioners, and we obviously have our mayor's office. And when I say that I am asking that question as well, it means I am preparing for our budget. Our first budget hearing is September 4th. Our second budget hearing is September 18th. And it is at that time that we will take a vote on the proposed budget that is before us, which shows a $400 million deficit. And I say I'm still looking into how it is that we got here, because every year we vote on a budget. It is our statutory obligation. It is the primary function that we have as elected officials, whether it's the state, local, or federal level. As an elected official, your job is to pass a budget. And in every budget that we have passed since I have been in office, since 2021, that was the first year that I passed a budget, there is a 5-year projection inclusive in the budget that we passed. The 5-year projection that we approved last year showed a deficit, but a deficit of $48 million, not a deficit of $400 million. So when we as a commission are voting on a package that experts, financial advisors, people that have been working in the county for many, many years show us numbers, and we're relying on those numbers in order to make decisions, we see a $48 million deficit and we say, okay, we're going to need to tighten our belts come next year. But we had reserves. We had put away money for constitutional officers. In fact, $41 million was put away and set aside for constitutional officers. And so we said, okay, I think we can stomach and absorb a $48 million deficit because we've at least done some level of due diligence and planning, showing a gap of really like $7 million, not $400 million, right? And so I am doing a lot of digging myself along with my team, and I'm sure all of the other commissioners are doing it as well, to figure out how from one year to the next, we were presented with a budget deficit projection of $48 million that turned into 400.
Okay. The constitutional offices were established, voted for, right, in 2018. We've had some time. We've had the forecast, of projection. There wasn't any pre-planning meeting with these departments, talking at least with these budget heads and saying, hey, we're waiting to see who's going to get elected in these positions, but let's come together now and see, hey, how are we going to structure this budget? Because from $50 million to 400 is a big jump. I'm just trying to understand how come that planning wasn't done before time. Fortune 500 companies are doing this, right? They're planning years in advance to their stakeholders.
Yeah.
What's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, so we've known, as you indicated, for a number of years that constitutional offices would be coming to Miami-Dade County, which is a major shift in government, right? And just so that you understand, when you hear constitutional offices, what that means is the property appraiser, the tax collector, the sheriff, the supervisor of elections, the clerk of courts used to all report to the mayor. Those were all buildings and offices and employees under her purview. They have now been separated, and now they're all under the control and the guidance of those elected officials that the people voted to run those departments. So they are now completely separate from the mayor and the administration. And with that separation comes quite a bit of logistical and financial planning, because now they prepare their own budgets, right? Whereas before, the mayor prepared a budget that was inclusive of all of those different departments and offices. Now these different individuals elected by the people are preparing those budgets. So we have prepared by way of saying, okay, listen, we know this is coming. Let's set aside certain dollars in preparation. But there are certain factors that are unknown, i.e. this person is elected and wants a budget demand of this much. That's something we can't contemplate. We can't predict into the future. And so we're struggling with that a little bit right now as far as having these proposals come in, figuring out how they're going to actually balance within our budget. And I know those conversations are continuing and ongoing, but there has been planning, preparing for this moment. But clearly, we are in a situation that we haven't seen since 2008, where there's going to be a reckoning and a reconciliation that must take place come September 4th.
So basically, these departments have the ability to strong arm us and tell us, hey, we know that your budget is projecting an increase of 5%, but you know what? We can do 15%. We want 15%. Is this something that going forward, because of these constitutional offices, we're always going to be facing a budget deficit? And if we do face this again in the future, how do we control these constitutional offices? If that's the case, they can do their own budgets.
Yeah. And so, it's an excellent question. And I wish I had a better answer for you. And here's what I mean when I say I wish I had a better answer. So I talked about projections. The projected deficit for this year was $48 million. We have a $400 million deficit. The deficit that was planned for the 26-27 calendar year was $150 million. So we are in a bad situation financially right now, but I want everybody to understand contextually that our internal projections are not indicating that we're going to bounce back from this in a year or even 2 years. According to our financial professionals and the budgets that we approved last year, we are looking at a deficit going into the next 4 years. And it's not entirely to blame on constitutional officers. There are a number of factors that weigh into that scenario. But I don't think it's about controlling our constitutional officers. It's about collaboration and working together with them so that they understand and we all understand that we're all here to serve the residents of Miami-Dade County. And there's a number of negotiations that are happening right now between our chairman, our mayor, all the constitutional officers. These are all wonderful people that were elected by our residents in Miami-Dade County. And this is just an adjustment that we all need to work together to find common ground. And I'm confident that we're going to get there and we're going to do that.
The question I get asked from my community the most, and this one's the most that everybody private message me, that calls me, texts me, they ask me, with the record property value increases that we've seen the past 5 years and all the property tax revenue that's been collected, where did all that money go? We shouldn't technically be in a deficit. Can we touch a little bit on that?
Again, an excellent question. And the intuition of our residents is frankly spot on because, again, the numbers don't lie. And when you look at the data, our population has grown by only 3% from 2021 to where we are now in 2025. Our budget has grown by 39%. When I was in office, our budget in 2021 was $9 billion. It's now at $13 billion, almost a $4 billion increase over that period of time with a population growth of only 3%. So the question and the intuition that people are asking is spot on. Our tax rolls are growing. Our population is not necessarily growing in connection with those numbers. So where has the money gone? In connection with that, we had ARPA funds. This was dollars that came from our federal government during the COVID, when everybody was trying to recover from COVID, that in addition to those tax rolls going up, flushed our local government with cash, thankfully, right? And so the questions that are being asked are rightful questions that should be asked. And that's what we're trying to reconcile right now. This money was spent. It's not there anymore. And we have found ourselves in an unprecedented situation. And the reason that the question is being asked is because, and I asked this of our administration, when was the last time that we saw budget deficits this large? And the answer was 2008. But that makes more sense because in 2008, that was when the real estate market crashed. And you're a real estate professional, so you understand this better than most. That's when our tax rolls were going down and where everybody's property values, tanked. And most of us lived through that, so we know exactly what that time was. That's not the time that we're in right now. So the intuition and the questions are a good one. And again, we are going to get into this in very, very great detail come September 4th. And that budget has to be balanced. It has to be passed. And these tough questions are going to be asked. And the public has the right to know the answers.
So assuming that we can find a common ground in the budget and everybody agrees on it, I'm assuming there's going to have to be some cuts. And I want to know, what are the cuts that we're looking at within the budget? And then what are the revenue opportunities that we're looking at? And two things I want to touch on the revenue. There's been discussions about charging people to park at Tropical Park. And I want to touch on that. And then I don't know if you have information on this, but the other day I went out to go eat and I saw a 1% tax on my bill for food on the restaurant bill. I don't know what that is. You may not know what that is. I just saw that randomly on top of my fee. So we can talk about the expenses and revenue that Miami-Dade County is looking to get into?
Yeah, so I'm not sure about the 1% tax on your bill. That might be coming down from the state, or that might be, I don't know if it was in Miami Beach. There's a number of local taxes that may fall under. But regarding the parking fees at Tropical Park and our public parks, I don't think there's an appetite for that. I certainly won't be supporting that. There are a number of our residents, particularly our very young population and our elderly population, that enjoy our public parks on a daily basis and simply can't afford the idea of having to pay every time they park to enjoy our public parks. So I don't know that that is going to be a proposal that passes at the board. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think the administration has walked that proposal back quite a bit. And so I don't anticipate that that will be an answer that's on deck for how to close this budget gap moving forward. I think that us as politicians and elected officials have very serious questions that we need to ask ourselves in times like this, where our historical data and record shows, and again, the numbers don't lie, such an amount of money coming into the county and such a large deficit from one year to the next. Last year, we had a surplus. We had a surplus of $31 million just last year. So this is not an incremental change. This is an extraordinary change from one year to the next. And when you look contextually at our 67 counties within the state of Florida, like, how many other counties are similarly situated to Miami-Dade County? There's only 5 or 6 that have budget deficits. And when you look at the numbers, the budget deficits in those counties are incremental compared to 400 million, maybe 14 million. Lee County has a $14 million budget deficit. Other counties are looking at 12, 14, $10 million deficits, which is what I anticipated from Miami-Dade County based on our numbers and the numbers that were presented to us last year. So this is a very serious time where very, very serious and tough decisions are going to have to be made. But I do not think that charging our residents to enjoy our parks is one of those solutions that are on option.
Now that we're talking about everything that's happening with the charges budget, there's a question that I've been getting asked about the DeSantis proposal of eliminating property taxes for primary residents. Even though it's very early, we don't know how that's going to look, right? How would that affect our budgets? We're already in a $400 million deficit. If that were to pass, I think that would be pretty catastrophic to us.
Hold on, right? Hold on. So listen, I think that budget proposal is an interesting one. It's one that would have to be rolled out over time with a lot of diligence and a lot of research that I believe is underway now. And I believe that the incremental approach related to that is no property taxes on our primary residence, particularly if your primary residence is already paid off, which I think makes a lot of sense, right? So if I own a home and I've been able to pay off my mortgage in full, why am I still paying property taxes on a piece of property that I own outright and entirely? If you have a car, for example, and you paid it off, enjoy the vehicle that you've, been able to accomplish paying off. The same should be true for your primary residence, and I fully support that. But an elimination of property taxes on all property, whether you have your mortgage paid off or not, would be wildly detrimental to our budget in Miami-Dade County, and sadly would affect those funds that rely entirely on our general fund, which is our sheriff's office, our fire department, our libraries. Those are departments that are entirely funded by our general fund, and those property taxes are what we use to fund those departments. So there is a lot that needs to be discussed and explored on that proposal. We're not there yet. That's not going to happen this year. I don't think that's going to happen next year. So I think we have time to prepare for that. But those sorts of proposals, I think, are reflective of things that I've said time and time again on the dais, that people are becoming more demanding, as they should, about how their tax dollars are being spent and how large government is. And that's the kind of running theme that we're seeing right now. And it's all kind of playing out as we sit here.
So what's the plan to increase transparency and accountability within the budget? Because a lot of people want to know, we should be knowing about this. We should be involved. Why are we even in this position? And then now there's fears of an increased tax that they don't know may be coming down the pipeline. So what are the plan to make more transparency, accountability there?
Yeah, my particular office, we're very committed to transparency and accountability, and that we're constantly pushing out information to our residents. After every Board of County Commission hearing, we're doing a 1.5-minute recap, just letting everybody know what the highlights were. We push that out on emails, we put that out on social medias, and any key issue after budget hearings, we do the same thing. So we're constantly trying to inform and educate our residents regarding key issues that are happening in the county, because if we don't, otherwise they're relying on essentially 2 publications countywide that are giving the information, and they're very selective on the issues that they choose to talk about. And so we're very committed to pushing out that information. But in addition to our office individually, the board and our chairman has been committed to this by creating, for example, our government efficiency committee and our appropriations committee. Those committees never existed prior to right now. Understanding that we were going into a very tight budget season, these committees were created in order to have this deep dive transparency created and what measures we can take on the commission and as a commission to effectuate essentially reform, because it's absolutely necessary. Our residents can't and should not be in the dark regarding the way that their tax dollars are being spent. And they're not, right? In fairness, like our budgets are published online, so it's all there. But a layperson is not going to have the time nor the understanding to comb through 3 volumes of Miami-Dade County $13 billion budget. It's just going to be extremely difficult, right? So absent people like you and people like myself and others translating those 3 volumes, 3,000 pages into layman's terms, it's very difficult for our residents to understand what's actually going on. And so again, we're trying to do it through committee review, through legislation that we can affect to bring greater transparency. As you know, the state is implementing their own level of analysis called DOGE, which I think everybody has heard about, to come in and effectuate levels of transparency as well. So again, our committee creation, the Government Efficiency and Transparency Committee, and the Appropriations Committee are indications of the current sentiment and climate of our residents, which is we want to know how our tax dollars are being spent. And it's a sentiment that I share and that our community absolutely should have more and as much information as possible on.
So the affordability in Miami-Dade County is pretty rough. The median household income is around 75,000 a year. And a lot of people feel they're getting priced out of Miami-Dade County, and the future of the community that they grew up in is no longer the community that they're in right now. It's a drastic change in the past 5 years. How do we create more affordability? What is the future of Miami looking like? Are we going to have to go vertical? What's transportation going to look like, even if we add all that density? You want to touch a little bit on that?
Yeah. So we are truly in an affordability crisis, and it's a really difficult issue. I think that we have been called ground zero for affordability. And frankly, it's a double-edged sword. We are in an affordability crisis in Miami-Dade County because so many people want to be here. And with so many people wanting to be here, we've had a population increase that is primarily in higher net worth and income group of individuals that are moving into Miami-Dade County, which is great for our tax rolls, but it's affecting real estate directly. We have a lot of foreign investors as well. And so it's been able to have our prices increase steadily to where now the average median price for a single family home in Miami-Dade County is $600,000. That is far out of reach for most residents in Miami-Dade County. And when I say most residents, I mean people that did everything right. You went to school, you went to college, you got a degree, you're making 6 figures right out of school, which God bless you if you've been able to accomplish that, but you find yourself in a rut in that I still can't afford the median average price in this county. Most are priced out of paradise, and what we need to do in order to affect that is simple economic supply and demand. We have to be able to provide additional inventory that is targeted and specific and complicit with our policies in the county for building affordable housing. We've been committed to that in District 8. We just put online almost 2,000 for sale, not for rent, because there's a big difference on affordability regarding for rent and for sale. 99% of the product that's being offered to our residents right now is for rent, which is great, but it's a Band-Aid. You don't acquire and achieve the American dream, i.e. independent financial wealth, by renting. It is more accessible and has been the traditional route for people to buy a home, pay off the mortgage, have that asset as your number one asset that allows you to leave it to your children and be able to create that generational wealth. Rent does not allow you to accomplish that. And so we as an office have been committed to being able to provide inventory that is for sale at an affordable price. And we have down payment assistance programs. We have mortgage assistance programs where if you couple that all together, pretty soon in District 8, we will have a number of units for sale under $400,000 that are 3-bedroom, 3 3-bathroom, brand new farm style construction homes where the only thing that you need in order to get into this home is a decent credit score and literally $4,000. Your down payment is subsidized by the county. Your interest rate is subsidized by the county. So your mortgage payment ends up being less than what you're paying for rent. That is the kinds of product that we need to be offering throughout Miami-Dade County to help with the affordability crisis and to allow our young people and really everyone to have access to that American dream.
Unlike other counties throughout the state of Florida, Miami's a little bit unique. You have the ocean to the east, you have the Everglades to the west, and down south, there's some land there that's quickly being developed. And we have this boundary called the Urban Development Boundary Line. And there's a lot of proposals now that are coming on the pipeline to extend that. Lennar Homes is planning to potentially add in the West Kendall area thousands of new homes in that community.
7,000 new homes.
7,000 new homes. And is there a possibility, right? We're going to have to go vertical in these other areas, right? Little Havana, all these communities have been established. Is there a possibility of removing that urban development boundary line or even pushing it further to create more inventory that's affordable?
Great question. And I want to be clear regarding the inventory that I described in my district, all are within our urban development boundary, which is a very important distinction because the urban development boundary always receives a lot of attention and for good reason. Other counties, for example, don't have an urban development boundary just to the north. Broward does not have that. We are unique in Miami-Dade County, however, and I'm very grateful for our urban development boundary. And I believe strongly that we should hold the line, particularly when we're talking about way out west as you start to encroach upon the Everglades and way out east as you start to encroach upon Biscayne Bay, right? Our land is so environmentally sensitive just west of our county and just east of our county. It directly affects our source of drinking water. So we have to be extraordinarily conscious and environmentally sensitive about the way that we develop in Miami-Dade County just because of how environmentally sensitive our land is. And that urban development boundary is there for that reason. Some will argue back in the 80s when it was crafted, it had nothing to do with environmental sensitivities. It was just a land planning tool. And I accept that argument. But as evolution and as we have evolved and understood these issues more, the environmental considerations must be taken into account. And so when I see applications of 700 acres being proposed, which is the Lennar application that you referenced, 7,000 homes way out west, this is definitely encroaching our Everglades restoration plan, and other environmental plans that are underway. Not only do I not support them, it's going to be a fight that I'm going to take on because everybody worries about traffic, and that's a very legitimate concern. But in addition to traffic congestion, this is about preserving agricultural land outside of our urban development boundary, and this is about protecting and preserving our very precious environmental land. So that application is only one of several applications. Several years ago, I fought off an application called the Aligned application that was over 300 acres to the other side, which was the east, and it was threatening Biscayne Bay. And that application is unfortunately coming back again with a different name, smaller in scale, but same applicant, same effort. And so we as a commission will have a number of very difficult decisions, and they won't be difficult for me because I know my position on these applications, but they will need the votes in order to move that urban development boundary in those areas in order to bring that land inside and develop in the way that they propose. And I encourage our residents to come and speak their minds when these applications are before the board because the consequences will be quite great.
So there is a proposal to possibly extend the 836 back in that area. Given where it's located, it may seem like something that could happen, pushing that line, especially in that specific area. Would there be other pockets of Miami-Dade County where it makes sense to push the line, maybe not a full entire push, maybe little pockets?
Yeah. So there have been studies in the past called, and there have been areas identified, I believe 6 or 7, and those areas are called UEAs, urban expansion areas. And these are the areas that a group of people came together and said, these are the most logical places if we're going to move the line in the future to move the line and develop in these areas because these are the areas that we've determined to be least environmentally sensitive. And it just makes sense. I'll tell you, our mayor is convening in short order a planning group And I look forward to working with her on that so that we're looking very closely at our entire urban development boundary and where we need to be looking at planned development that is not going to affect our environmentally sensitive lands, but makes sense for the growth of Miami-Dade County. And so I know that planning is underway. And again, I encourage our residents to get involved. And I know that this committee that our mayor is convening is going to be comprised of a lot of environmentalists, as it should, but also a lot of developers. So everybody come to the table, essentially the way that the UEA was created a number of years ago, to revisit it and look at it again to make sure that our policies are up to date and current, because the pressures to develop are greater than ever. And the impact to our environmentally sensitive lands is greater than ever. And frankly, it's as a direct result of term limits, right? So when you are a commissioner and you know that your term is limited to 8 years, it makes a difference. Prior to I started in 2020. I came in at the end of the way that it's always been done in Miami-Dade County, which is commissioners served as long as they wanted. There were no term limits. We had commissioners that were on the dais for 20 plus years. That has all changed now, and that's a good thing because term limits are a good thing. We need to change out politicians and our lawmakers. But being on the board for 8 years, I have the concern of whether or not our elected officials have that kind of long-term investment in our community on making decisions, because once you're in for your first 4 years, you run for your second 4 years, and then you're on your way out, right? And so these developers are very, very smart. They're very, very savvy, and they know how to count to 7, right? And they try to, get in front of commissioners that are on their way out, because the consequences are a lot less for you, right? You can understand intuitively how a commissioner may be more inclined to move the urban development boundary if they're not facing an election in the next couple of years, right? So I think term limits factors into that as well. Our developers are aware of this, and it's why we need to take a very close look at the urban development boundary, figure out ways to codify it so that it becomes like cement. Like, we cannot move it, because with term limits, my concern is that line is going to get moved time and time again.
And how are we going to address transportation? I believe the rapid bus system is opening up right now officially.
Yeah.
But towards the west, the traffic is terrible.
It's terrible.
And it's gotten to the point now where even on US 1, before at 4 o'clock, the traffic will build up. But now even at 2 o'clock, the traffic's already starting 1:30, and it's getting rough. How are we going to address that? And I guess, what are solutions that are possible?
Yeah, so great question again. And, these are really top of mind issues for all of our residents. So I appreciate you asking them. We have what's called a SMART plan, which is a master plan countywide in order to create and invest in these key corridors to be able to improve our public transportation system. The first of those corridors is the South Corridor that is coming online. And that's a very sensitive issue for myself and our residents in the South, because everybody knows that we all voted with the half penny sales tax going back to the Pinellas administration. We all voted to tax ourselves and put money in a pot so that we could get rail. That's what we voted for. That's what we paid for. But those monies never got appropriated the way that the voters intended. And so instead, we got a $300 million investment in buses. And people are not happy about that. But the investment was made. The vote was made before I joined the board. And now my mission is to try to honestly do everything I can to make this investment work for our residents. And so we have security guards at these bus rapid transit stations. They're air-conditioned stations. They're kind of like not just buses, but buses that are intended to simulate a train ride experience. And I just visited a couple of weeks ago. It is a very, very nice investment. It is a very, very nice facility. It's much, much improved from just standard bus stops. And so I strongly encourage our residents to consider taking our new bus rapid transit, which is running to the south. But to the west, the commissioners that represent that area and the residents there know how in desperate need we are for a mass transit system to the west. My mother lives in West Kendall, and she uses our public transportation system to go to work downtown every day and has for more than 20 years. So, she's in that traffic every day. And I know, just like you said, it gets worse as early as 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We have to, as a county, be able to provide a mass transit system for our residents that is indicative of the size of Miami-Dade County. You think of most metropolitan cities that are very large, San Francisco, Miami, Dallas, Austin, Texas, they all have very robust public transportation systems that the residents rely upon. Miami-Dade is different. We are a huge metropolitan city, but we are not small in geographic size. We are very large. So we're large by population and we're large by land, making a public transportation system here extremely expensive to build out. And so, a lot of efforts have been made on a number of the different corridors. Commissioner Eileen Higgins, for example, did a phenomenal job securing investment under the previous administration to have one of her corridors built out, but that funding has been pulled and is currently on hold. So we're constantly doing everything we can as a commission to get these corridors funded. We know the West. We know that West Kendall needs a public transportation system that is far more robust than what's currently in place. It always boils down to funding.
We're facing the worst budget crisis since 2008. Is the budget for public transportation going to get cut, or what departments are going to see the largest risk of defunding?
So again, great question. Our public transportation department currently runs at a deficit, meaning that the department is not self-funding. It's running at a deficit, meaning we're pulling from reserves in order to fund that department. I believe last year was the first year of that. It's certainly going to be true this year, and it's certainly going to be true next year. And so we are going to have to make tough decisions as a board on how we're going to close that gap to make sure that our transportation system remains funded and not running at a deficit to where serious cuts are having to be made. I don't believe that the transportation budget is facing significant cuts this year because there have been such significant investments made in our public transportation system. Can you imagine investing $300 million and then cutting back the service that we just invested in so heavily? So I think the transportation department is okay. And I say okay with quotations, meaning understanding it's running at a deficit, but I don't think that the major cuts are coming from our transportation department. Our parks department, unfortunately, is getting hit very, very hard. And our cultural affairs department is getting hit very, very hard. And so to those, and inclusive of myself, who prioritize the arts and prioritize cultural affairs and our parks, that's where this particular year's budget is reflecting the greatest hits.
Well, Commissioner, I want to end this off on a positive note because we've been talking a lot about some scary, heavy things.
Heavy topics.
So what would you like to leave off with the audience on the future of where Miami-Dade County is going and where you think we'll be in the next 10 years?
Listen, I think that we need to keep a macro perspective on how extraordinary and amazing Miami-Dade County is. I'm born and I'm raised here. I am a product of this community. I'm a first-generation American. My story is the immigrant story, like so many of us here. And everybody wants to live here for a reason. We have the most beautiful weather, the most beautiful beaches, frankly, the most beautiful people, and the most beautiful energy and spirit in this county. And that is precious. And we as elected officials have to do everything in our power to not only protect and preserve our people, our residents that make this such an extraordinary place, but make sure that their quality of life is protected. That is our function, and our role as elected officials and public servants is to protect their tax dollars, but also to protect their quality of life. I always said, Miami-Dade County is this world-class city and it's on the world stage, but it's world-class for who? Tends to be world-class for our visitors and those that are coming in for very fancy events like F1 and FIFA soccer, for example. But the everyday hardworking resident here in Miami-Dade County feels more and more disconnected from their government doing for them. And we have to shift that narrative. We have to show our residents that we are doing everything to protect their quality of life and make them feel like their tax dollars are being spent extraordinarily wisely. So I don't know if that's necessarily a good note, other than I love this city, I love the people, and my colleagues, and I know the mayor are committed to making sure that their quality of life continues to be top of mind and priority here in Miami-Dade.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your time. I really appreciate it and letting the community know what's going on with Miami-Dade County. And for those of you that are watching this video for the first time, hit the like button, subscribe, and if you want to reach out to the commissioner, where can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. Please send us an email at District 8, and that's District 8 with the number 8, not the EIGHT, at miamidade.gov.
Thank you, Commissioner.